Oh boy, is this a touchy subject. The opinions on this game are completely bipolar. I've never seen a game which reviewers love so much and yet apparently the majority of gamers dislike. So in this review I've purposely avoided spoilers, trailers, any gameplay footage, early reviews and absolutely everything related to The Last of Us, so I can give the most honest and fair review I possibly can. Also want to say off the bat, this is going to be completely different from all my other Scottish opinions, as there's not going to be as many jokes, but just kind of wanted to get a straight up plain review on The Last of Us, so here it is. Also, before I begin, I want to throw out all my inherent biases and where I sit jumping into this game. Something that so many reviews purposely leave out when reviewing games. Why is this important? Well, let's be honest, you as a gamer, you don't like every game you play, even if it is a masterpiece. We all have our inherent biases. For example, my brother primarily plays FIFA and COD. If he was to review this game, he would more than likely hate aspects of the game that others love. Although reviewers will tend to take the most objective perspective as possible, this bias can be the difference from you seeing a problem with the gameplay design whilst everything seeming perfect to them. For example, I never really grew up with platformers other than a few Mario and Spyro games, so when it comes to Super Mario Odyssey, it's easy for me to say I have no idea what is fun about running and jumping around, just collecting stuff, but the game holds one of the highest critically acclaimed scores on Metacritic with 97, and any Mario fan or gamer who likes platformers would praise it for its incredible design, whereas if I was to review Super Mario Odyssey, not giving you my inherent bias or background with the genre, it's going to be completely nonsensical. Because, well, to put it simply, I don't like the core foundation and gameplay loop that platformers are centered around. So how can I provide a fair review if I don't even enjoy the genre? So where's my inherent bias? Well, firstly, gameplay is the most important aspect I look for in a game, and first person shooters and multiplayer PvP games tend to be my go-to games, as for years I have grown up on the COD, Rainbow Six, Halo and Battlefield franchises, but this by no means affects how much I enjoy other games. It is more that I will tend to enjoy and put more time into these types of games. When it comes to The Last of Us 2 specifically, I played and loved The Last of Us back in 2014, making it one of the best story driven games I'd ever played, so I do have an attachment to the game, although that experience has faded over the years as I only played it the once. And I should state, I don't typically enjoy story driven games and tend to play games more for the gameplay, as I find most story driven games not that enjoyable, and I absolutely despise the Telltale series. I am sorry, those games are woeful. Right, well yes, that was a long intro. Let's actually begin with the review. Although I would normally prioritise gameplay, nobody, and I mean nobody, is buying The Last of Us 2 for its riveting gameplay. People that aren't mentally insane are going to be getting this game for the character, story and incredible attention to detail Naughty Dog is famous for. So if you somehow don't know, what is The Last of Us 2? Well, it's the continuation of The Last of Us 1, set a few years after the ending of the original. You'll predominantly play as Ellie, where you'll be travelling through the post-apocalyptic world where you will encounter and have to overcome hostile groups such as bandits and zombies. This is really the extent to what I can describe without any major spoilers, because at the end of the day, what's the point in a review if I'm just going to spoil the game? Before I talk about the story, I need to make it clear, I'm not a story guy. Most games, I straight up skip the cutscenes if I'm finding them boring or they're ruining the pace of the game. And overall, although I'm no story buff, I think the story was decent and definitely engaging, although there are some low points where the story can become boring or the pacing is completely halted, but overall I found myself playing this game for the story and cutscenes rather than for the gameplay, which for someone who is so gameplay driven is not common for me. I find a lot of the characters very hit or miss in this game, with the game throwing so many characters at you with only a few of them actually being memorable and likeable. The story takes a non-linear approach to storytelling, going back in time to give you additional information about the characters or plot points, which can be great at points to grow your attachment to characters characters and build suspense to the current time period. However, this non-linear storytelling can also be a negative, as some flashbacks completely fail to achieve anything, with being excruciatingly slow and boring, failing to grow your attachment for characters and deliver anything to develop the story. But one of the things I love most about this game is how sporadic this game can be, similar to the first, with major events happening instantly as characters snap under the pressures of the post-apocalyptic world, which always keeps you on your feet, wondering how each encounter will go, having you worried for your favourite characters as you don't know what's going to happen next. Where the story falters, in my opinion, is roughly halfway through the game, where the game forces you to like certain characters, which for some this may work, but it made me dislike the characters so much more as they were being forced down my throat, rather than letting me or the player naturally see the other side of the story and perspective. They completely halt the pacing of the game, creating one of the most jarring gaming experiences I've ever had, leading to some of the most dull and boring moments in a game I've ever played, as you're taken out of the climax of the story and placed in the absolute most boring, least interesting chapters of the game, where the game only becomes properly enjoyable again hours later once the story starts to pick up again. But the game is amazing at presenting a bleak story, which I definitely like, as it goes against the usual happy feel-good nature most games go for, as it is much safer and easier to do well. And obviously in the storytelling aspect of dialogue, voice acting, actors' performances, cinematography and animation is just all incredible. The quality that Naughty Dog achieves with making engaging but yet subtle scenes grabbing your attention without the need for massive set pieces or major events is really incredible. Each cutscene is a delight to watch because of the amount of work that has went into these scenes to maximise the emotional impact they can deliver, with an amazing soundtrack that invokes so much emotion with its bleak but beautiful style. On the actual visuals, the game obviously looks outstanding, with the attention to detail being probably the best I've ever seen in any game to date. The environments are so packed with Easter eggs and world building elements, giving a story to each and every location you visit, making an absolute treat to explore rooms and locations. How the developers have filled the locations to the brim with unique items is really incredible. The fact every room tells a different story from the next is remarkable. When you're not sitting through cutscenes, you're going to be fighting zombies in two different factions, with each enemy having their own unique combat trait. I'm going to be straight up, the combat has barely changed since The Last of Us 1, which came out in 2013, and even back then the gameplay wasn't stellar. So it is pretty disappointing to see there's been little change or innovation to improve the combat other than refinements of the foundation that The Last of Us 1 set. You still have limited resources where you will scavenge for ammo and crafting materials to aid you in combat, giving you an edge with traps or extra healing items. Most of the combat encourages stealth as you have limited ammo, and most of the times attacking the enemies head on will likely fail due to your relatively low amount of resources and the stun that guns inflict when they shoot you. One thing I will mention is how good the game feels in general. Just moving your character feels so good, with the weight of your character and incredible animation, rather than the little feedback other third-person games tend to deliver. Now, in the gunplay aspect, the guns do feel overall really good, as they mostly have a satisfying kick to them and are really rewarding to land killing blows on enemies. With guns having a large kick to them, it discourages spam firing and forces you to be more precise and patient with your shot. Add on the brilliant, satisfying punch to bullets, and guns feel incredible to shoot and use. Where the combat shines, however, is when you enter an area filled with enemies and you're planning how you're going to most efficiently take out the zombies, placing traps, luring enemies to your position, and it's at its best when you're using the enemies to attack each other, like letting zombies kill the enemies at hand. However, the combat is hampered by its laughable AI, like really, Jesus Christ, very outdated stealth mechanics, and how frustrating human to human combat can be. Firstly, there's no problem with the zombies AI, but it's almost like the humans hold the same traits, as they tend to be so stupid that it actually ended up being funny. They would forget my position almost instantly, and also don't get me started on the companion AI, which constantly walks in front of the enemy sightlines, and the AI completely ignores it, plus the fact they are mostly useless and barely ever help you in a firefight, which made sense in The Last of Us 1 when Ellie was a little kid and was your companion, but now when they're just firing bullets into enemies missing, or they're just doing no damage, it's just kind of awkward. Now, the gameplay can be pretty frustrating, so I'm going to play a clip as an example in the background. So let me set the stage. You have Dina on my left, and the first problem is, well, the bullet doesn't go through the glass because, you know, why not? Next, you have a guy on the right aiming at me, which I cannot do anything about without using a Molotov or something like that, as the aim speed is significantly slower than how quickly he can shoot me, but that'd be fine on its own. But the bullet forces you into a stun, bringing you back to square one, which is so frustrating. You can't really do anything unless no one is aiming at you and you aim at one of them before they aim at you. Then, without warning from the AI partner, Dina, does absolutely nothing, not even warning me or shooting the enemy. I get ambushed from the AI side by someone trying to melee me, which I had no idea that he was coming, and it forces me out of cover and to run, and it's just, oh, that was so frustrating. This happens in pretty much most encounters, something similar along the lines. Although there are ways about it, it just happens that frequently that it can be really frustrating. Also want to mention something that was honestly hilarious once I noticed it, is that one of the factions, the Scars, is literally 4 enemies. They put so much effort into making multiple bricks with their own patterns and distinct features, something that 99% of people will miss, but then they make a faction comprising of 4 enemies. I find that honestly hilarious. I was literally just killing the same 4 guys over and over again. The level design for combat is much better than the first game, as areas are so much more expansive, giving you a lot more freedom. However, again, this is hindered by the enemy placement, as typically the enemies funnel you into a very restrictive playstyle, funneling you down the only viable route if you want to avoid enemies, but nonetheless it's an improvement. There are other elements of non-combat focused gameplay like soft puzzles, where you will need to find alternative routes into a building, etc. And I'm not gonna lie, I actually find these pretty fun, as they're not overabundant and they're all natural, with you just needing to use logic and principles that also apply to real life. Like, for example, there's this safe combination which you see a note beside the safe briefly mentioning the dog, which then you can find the dog's picture on the employee of the month wall, and if you enter the date that he was the employee of the month, it will open. I just find that really cool. I love that. Next, onto the progression side of the game, you will gradually get an increased arsenal with different weapons which can all be upgraded at workbenches with materials that you will collect. There's also a skill tree like system where you can unlock abilities that will improve your aim and open up crafting options, etc. Both of these are pretty satisfying to upgrade and is a definite improvement over the previous game. Well, is it fun? Kinda. The game has its ups and downs, but it definitely is an amazing story-driven game. Although the gameplay is mediocre at best, with a lot of the encounters being more annoying than actually fun, the story is compelling enough to keep you engaged and interested, and no matter what, you'll be in awe of the game's extremely high standard of quality, with some of the best visuals, voice acting, music, and character performances you will ever see. And if I wanted to show the potential of the medium to people who never grew up with games, this would be the game I'd point to. And I'm glad they kept with the gritty storytelling and bleak nature, as so many games avoid this route, and it's amazing when it's fully realised. I think to conclude, it definitely doesn't hold anything on The Last of Us 1, but it's still a great story driven game, and with it roughly taking me 21 hours, which is quite a fast pace, mind you, I think the game is definitely a memorable experience, and if you really like more story driven games, it is a good game. So I've revamped the rating system, some changes, but pretty much most of the games are staying in kind of the same positions, but we've got more of a variation rather than good, alright, bad, so we've got like in between there anyways. And where does The Last of Us Part 2 sit? Well, I really struggled with the placement of this because on the one hand I actually really enjoyed my time with it, got really engaged in the game, but on the other hand the gameplay is really mediocre and sometimes the pacing was just awful. So I'm really not 100% sure, but I definitely think it's going to sit in class for me anyways, or even between banging and class. It's hard, alright?